Since we inch ever closer to Halloween by this time the video gets posted, it only felt natural that I ramp it up more and talk about villains before the night falls. And because such a season involves discussing heinous individuals who inhabit the night, it was finally time to go back and take a look at Disney's best, or Disney's most sinister in that case. And such best involves one that are on the pure evil side of the spectrum with the likes of Maleficent and so on, of which actually served as an inspiration to this very character as described by his own animator, Disney legend Andreas Deja, who designed the biggest and baddest Disney foes. Where the biggest character that represents such a side so well was in fact Jafar from Aladdin, whom I believe is one of the more nastier Disney villains that has been ever released. I mean, yes, you could say that for others released during the time in the Disney Renaissance having similar traits and probably darker ones that put more fear into you by their own nasty actions, but Jafar is one that really revels in his own malicious intent, one who constantly laughs in the face of his enemies while disguising a calm and composed authority in its initial introduction, the quest for power that corrupts all. Where to be frank, he just is a major psychopath who will stop at nothing to rule over all people through immoral means, a slithering devil who preys on the weak of society, using them until they no longer seem useful. Where for those reasons, instead of just talking about him in the first film Aladdin, we should also expand his influence as the main villain to the first direct-to-DVD sequel, Return of Jafar, as it covers a little more ground with the legs of such a dangerous character that has become a staple in the Disney villain canon. The one who would probably revel in the fact he could still be called evil straight to his face because that is what he perfectly represents. And thinking about it, he probably is the best animated and designed Disney villain overall, being described as a slim, tall, bony, middle-aged man whom you definitely picture in a creepy way due to him hitting on characters like Jasmine with the way he did. A character that was originally inspired by 3 different individuals in the original folktale that had certain powers and traits that interacted within that very story. In the beginning of the film, we get a picture of a commanding tall vizier leading people to complete his own task, or more importantly sending others to do his apparent dirty work, because getting to know where the mysterious lamp of the genie is requires one person being the diamond in the rough to enter and live, where others like Azim are just swallowed whole for not fitting that description that later becomes someone like Aladdin because their heart is just not in the right place when we finally see the interaction between Genie and themselves. Where Jafar is a character that is too lazy to face repercussions, needing to find a diamond in the rough to enter and give the lamp to him, as you know he can't do it himself and requires others beneath him to do it. His searches are just done in vain of his selfish desires, putting others out so he can risk another day to live, which of course is added on to be berated by in his sidekick the parrot Iago, who moreover serves as the freed up emotions of Jafar, where the actual personalities were developed to be the opposite before knowing it would serve the story better to have Jafar appear more threatening with a calm demeanor, representation of inner dialogue coming out of someone else's mouth, something that still slowly erodes over time to reveal who truly is evil, where it is here that we learned as the royal vizier, he just has a strong grip on the sultan due to his secret nature as a sorcerer with his staff that could hypnotize him straight because of how gullible he really is, trying to use the information of his daughter Jasmine not wanting to marry a suitor to his advantage, a person who truly disdains both classes of the high society above him and those below him for something he wants personally, and also done to get the sultan's ring to power the sands of time to finding this diamond in the rough to affirm this indeed was Aladdin who has this heart, actually captured so he could use them to enter the Cave of Wonders, where it is so easy to see his dubious nature with his interactions with Jasmine about what happened to Aladdin, being arrested, lying about him to be executed to make her feel bad despite hanging out with him earlier on her own accord, keeping in line of what should be expected in the law and reveling in the fact that she felt upset at his apparent death, knowing some sort of truth that she went out for. Like, I would say another great characteristic of Jafar is his ability to make others feel bad whenever he decides to appear, in the way that they could make him hate him or hate themselves, also showing us that he is a master of disguise where his plans were to be set in motion by Aladdin as an old man stuck in prison, and he offers the chance to free him in order to help with the Cave of Wonders, which he successfully succeeds in navigating without dying, finally finding the lamp but having Abu be the greedy monkey who was the cause of all this structure to collapse soon after, rushing to save the lamp at the request of the old man Jafar, who finally reveals his true nature, offering his eternal reward, yet still defeated by Abu, trapping them down below, while Jafar ultimately fails in his mission to have the lamp. And as we'll see eventually in other areas of the film, This shows the big hubris and arrogance of Jafar's character, thinking he'd win the day when he ultimately fails. Because his failures are ultimately made worse by how the Sultan gets informed by Jasmine of how he executed a prisoner without him knowing, without consulting him, and how when she becomes queen, she would make sure to get rid of him, threatening his entire position of power and everything he worked for after losing the lamp to Aladdin. Yet how Iago serves to satisfy his worst traits and desires by having him to be a potential suitor to marry Jasmine, who he lusts after, and takes power to remove both of them at the end. A genius move that requires only manipulation of the law, which the Sultan gullibly upholds on a daily basis. Where that gullible attitude still carries over to his reservations about Jafar. Not that he personally feels that way about him, but how he indirectly insults him while actually under the use of his hypnosis.
But you're so old.
Of course, he has to use this because there is no real law that says so, since it has to be a royal prince rather than a vizier who only helps in his capacity. Finally ending this insult by the arrival of Prince Ali, who is in fact, we know, Aladdin making use of his wishes under the genie that Jafar was supposed to have. An event that humorously keeps getting him trampled upon whenever he wants to have a word and also have a hint of suspicion. One where he wants to get rid of Ali forever, as his plans would have been ruined once again. But then again, a good villain obviously does what it takes to gain the rewards by any means necessary, right? To make sure their own personal hero could be captured or thrown out so that they could never be found, trying to once again hypnotize the Sultan into marrying his daughter before Ali comes back to prove how terrible he had been. But in doing so, he kinda reveals that this boy is in fact Aladdin, having the lamp escaping his fate, but happily accepting this revelation for the chance at Genie finally, as the relationship started to deteriorate, all plans coming together as one.
Oh boy.
Which makes his position finally rewarded, using him as a slave rather than how he was treated as a friend. A fractured friendship because he wanted to get what he wants, betraying his own promise to Genie that he was going to be free, thus allowing Iago to take it away and have Jafar come in, stripping away his rights just like he stripped away the Sultan's power for his own as the first wish and ruining the entire engagement party. Contrasting with Aladdin's simple wish to help him get the girl, Jafar uses it to increase his power, like from being a simple ruler to the most powerful sorcerer in the world, enabling him to use more magic to make others bow to his will and finally defeat the street rat, stripping him down to the truth of the man Jasmine met on the streets long ago in this genius move of flipping the song Prince Ali towards a terrible truth. And during these moments, we finally get to see a look in the true Jafar that has been there all along. The threatening, calm, and composed Grand Vizier actually turns out to be a maniacal psychopath who revels in his sadistic narcissism showcased in this evil laugh. It shows us the true character of a villain whom loves to abuse his victims, like humiliating them to the point for who they truly are, or just straight up mocking them in any which way for being both above and below him. Where actually mentioning this point is where we have to mention a deleted song from the original film created by Howard Ashman before he died during the development of Aladdin. This song was called Humiliate the Boy and did take place during the Prince Ali reprise, diving more into Jafar's sadism about torturing the truth of Aladdin and more into his own worst character traits. It was removed for several reasons, like it appeared to have him make more than 3 wishes, and to show Aladdin this way was a bit more cruel, understanding why it became the reprise in the final film that still showed the same trait Jafar was doing, toying with his own victims, where it is just simply effective to have the song that the hero sang in the first place praising them to become actually insulting them. But to me, I think his real worst character traits are shown within his attraction to Jasmine, still wanting to court her to marry him for the sake of his own lust, which in some ways can be more creepier than other Disney villains like Frollo. I mean, don't get me wrong, as my favorite villain, the way he acts towards Esmeralda is just so disgusting and vile against all Disney villains so far, but how this is just done with a hint of confliction that tortures his own soul with his lust driving him insane, compared to someone like Jafar who willingly shows this attitude of attraction to be his own, selfishly and narcissistically desiring what he wants, like a trophy on his arm of the most powerful man in the world, treating her with such dubious intent, and not apologizing to anyone up high for his own actions, even going so far as to wanting the genie to break the rules of making people fall in love with others, removing their own personal free will. Of course, he can't really do that because that is within the laws and rules, but how she fakes it when Aladdin finally comes and shows us back to distract and finally defeat him. And for those reasons, it also makes him quite worse than Gaston as a sexist narcissist this because, unlike him, he's actually smart enough to know what others are like for his own personal gain, rather than an idiot who just sees himself to be the best or superior looks. It doesn't help that he makes her also a literal slave with shackles in this very scene in a blood-red agrabah infested with his power until he wises up to realize Aladdin's tricks, where his powers alone prove to be far superior to any attack that they could do as the most powerful sorcerer in the world, but how his words become more effective of a truth that Genie held all the cards against him. Phenomenal cosmic powers which any lust-filled tyrant would want control over, automatically appealing to Jafar's egotistical hunger, granting his last wish to become a genie himself without knowing the true consequence or cost that Aladdin learned earlier that Genie had, a lamp and chains to a master to serve their own wish as their command. That after everything, after revealing his true treacherous snake-like nature, he gets defeated by the greatest desire with the greatest consequence, dragging Iago 2 back within as he gets trapped in an itty-bitty living space for at least 10,000 years. A perfect defeat for someone who got hell-bent on his own greed, but however, how it's not the real end just yet, as he still remained to be a genie whom someone could free if they get their hands on it. Leading us to the next film of Return of the Jafar as such continuation, where yes, despite complaining about the quality of these direct-to-DVD sequels, I will admit I enjoyed his own character's continuation to finally settle things off and break Iago from his grip, being freed to do the right thing over the course of this movie. That he longs to be free in this film to commit to his own vengeance to kill Aladdin, yet how he reminds himself he is still shackled as a slave to the rules, limiting himself to this curse of unlimited power, and then serving someone else like Abis Ma, who fears what he looks like as a red demon of his own true making, disguising back as the sorcerer appearance made before his final wish. The fun thing that Jafar does as a genie is managing to trick others like his master, who wants 3 wishes of his own, but does it in a way to serve his own will, his own purpose, to actually help him by helping himself. Yes, he is a genie restricted to a master, but it doesn't mean he has to forego his own conscience in doing so. He doesn't have free will, but still will nonetheless, with still making inherently dangerous decisions as a villain who can take other roads to commit to his own plans, especially holding such power, albeit limited, and how he uses Iago again with Abis Ma as a friend to distract the others to tear them apart and break them piece by piece to exact his revenge, which we eventually see him regret in doing so, torturing others as he did from before, disguising in the public to make people believe this is what others like Jasmine think when he actually captured them for his own gain and disguised as them. A greed that knows no bounds, where he thinks himself superior to all others like the genie when he finally bests them in this film because he actually had more power, since we learn that because he was freed, he lost a tremendous amount of his own power, most likely due to the inherent cosmic nature that would be dangerous for society and mostly for him to gloat that goes along with the character of Jafar. And yes, technically this means this is the official Disney villain song of Jafar that's original, but how I really didn't include it because it was focused on in a sequel and mostly focused on the others with comparing to himself, rather than the deleted ones like Why Me that actually pertains to his own character. Songs that relate to the fact of how much he values his foes, his superiority, and his emotional sadism that makes him who he is as a character. We're going back to talk about the other deleted songs like Why Me is kind of one that gives away a fact that made his upbringing more similar to Aladdin being looked down from below. Well, not being well regarded in the public, but how he took it in the opposite way to be more selfish rather than supporting others like Aladdin's character was. And then songs like these are just fully solidifying a fact that he just wants nothing more but for him to succeed in his life, even if it alienates others like Iago in the end, using his masters to serve his will, trying to finally defeat them, but ending up underestimating the power of connection and the power of supporting others. The greatest downfall again to Jafar is his own greed, or his love of himself, including in the fact when he saw Iago stand against him, angry at the betrayal, but ultimately suffering the consequence as he destroyed the lamp in the lava that he created, trying to redeem the sins he caused in the past by making him suffer a violent, painful death as powerful as the powers that were laid upon him, to end things finally for the true pain he caused upon his foes for abusing his own standing in power far more than what was expected of him, because of the simple fact he could. Where Jafar remains to be a great icon in Disney villainy because of those simple facts that he was willing to engage upon evil with gleeful delight, even expressed outside of the Aladdin franchise in Disney works like House of Villains, still acting as the main threat to characters like Mickey Mouse who wants that control for themselves, that he proves himself to be the most evil, barring some actual demonic figures, because he loves it. He loves power, and power loves him with all he tried to conjure. Yet how at the end of all things, he just failed because all things are created with their own limits, reasons against their existence in the natural order of things of the balance between right and wrong. And with that said, I'm all done. Goodbye.